My brother found out he was adopted. Then he found out our mom lied to everyone, including herself. My name is Aaron, and if you had asked me 10 years ago whether I considered myself part of a normal family, I would have said yes, 2 parents, 1 younger brother, Sunday dinners, a golden retriever, the whole thing. But now, looking back, I don't even know if anything we had was ever real. The lies started early, I just didn't know they were lies. And by the time the truth came out, everything I thought I knew about my life had already begun to rot from the inside. It started with my dad, like most family problems do. He wasn't a drunk, he wasn't violent. He didn't yell or cheat. In fact, he was almost too perfect. Always early to pick us up from school. Always knew the right thing to say. He could fix a broken dishwasher, sew a button back on, talk to my teachers, and cook a better Sunday roast than my mom. He was the kind of man that made people jealous. Mom worked a lot, she was a nurse, and when I was little, she did night shifts often. Sometimes she'd come home and collapse on the couch, smelling like hospital antiseptic and exhaustion. We didn't talk much, but I thought that was normal. Moms were tired. Dads were comforting. I was proud of them both. And then there was Owen, my little brother, 5 years younger, loud and always trailing behind me, idolizing me like I hung the moon. The first crack in our family came quietly. I was 14, it was a Saturday morning, and Dad was making pancakes while Owen and I argued over the TV remote. Mom had just gotten home from a shift and looked off, not tired. She was always tired, but pale, almost sick. She didn't eat breakfast that morning, just went upstairs saying she had a headache. I remember Dad watching her go, spatula in hand, face unreadable. He flipped another pancake and said, "Let her rest." That night I heard them fighting, not yelling, just raised voices, tense and deliberate. I remember hearing my name. Then Owen's. I tiptoed down the stairs, trying not to creak the floorboards, and sat just outside the kitchen, listening through the cracked door. "She can't know," Mom said. Her voice was shaking. "Not yet. She'll have to know eventually." Dad replied, "What if he finds out first? What if someone tells him?" "No one knows." We agreed. We agreed we'd never. Then there was silence, and the soft sound of Dad sighing. I crawled back up the stairs, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Who was he? What was I not supposed to know? The next morning, everything was normal again. Too normal. Mom made waffles, which she never did. Dad kissed her cheek like nothing had happened. But I couldn't stop wondering. Something had changed. I started watching more closely, listening, and I noticed things I hadn't before. Mom's awkwardness when hugging Owen. Dad's way of smoothing things over when Mom got upset with him. The way they avoided being alone in a room together for too long. I tried asking. At dinner one night, I said, "Did you guys have a fight last weekend?" My dad smiled too fast. "Adults disagree sometimes, honey. It's no big deal." Mom just nodded. "Nothing for you to worry about." But I was worried. I couldn't shake it. The tension didn't go away. In fact, it got worse. Owen started having nightmares. I'd find him in the hallway, crying, saying he couldn't breathe. He was only 9. I took him back to bed every time, brushing his hair back and humming like Mom used to when I was small. I didn't tell our parents. The next major moment came when I was 17. I had been cleaning the attic, sorting through old boxes for a school project. I found an old photo album tucked behind a box of Christmas decorations. It wasn't labeled. I opened it. At first, the pictures looked normal. Mom and Dad at their wedding. Dad holding me as a baby, Mom laughing with Owen. But something was off. I flipped a few pages in and found a picture that stopped me cold. It was Mom, very pregnant, but the date on the back said March 2005. That didn't make sense. Owen wasn't born until October 2005. Mom didn't even look that pregnant in the photo. And then, 2 pages later, another picture, Mom holding a newborn baby. But it wasn't Owen. The baby had darker skin, no name written, no date. I took the album downstairs and asked my dad. His face drained of color as he took it from me. "Where did you find this?" "In the attic." "Who was that baby?" He looked like he might lie. I could see it, his mouth half open, eyes darting. Then he closed the album gently and said, "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" He sat down, took a deep breath. "That baby is your brother." I blinked. "You mean Owen?" "No," he said. "Before Owen, his name was Marcus." I sat down. I couldn't feel my legs. "What do you mean was?" "He died," Dad said quietly, "when he was a few weeks old. SIDS, your mom couldn't talk about it. We buried that part of our lives, literally and figuratively." My throat felt tight. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" "Because it hurt too much," he said. "And because Owen, he's not mine, Aaron." Everything in the room seemed to tilt sideways. "What?" Dad looked down at his hands. After Marcus died, we were both broken. Your mom had an affair. She got pregnant, we fought a lot. But I decided to raise Owen as mine. I didn't want you to grow up in a broken home. I forgave her or tried to, but the truth, it never really went away. I couldn't breathe. My brother wasn't my full brother. My mom had cheated. They'd lost a baby and buried the story. And I had spent years living in a house built on silence. I didn't tell Owen, I couldn't, not then. But that was only the beginning. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept looking at the ceiling, listening to every creak in the house, thinking about the baby in the photo, Marcus. A brother I never knew I had. A name I'd never heard. A face that looked nothing like Owen. And Owen, I kept seeing him in my head, laughing with his gap-toothed grin when he was 5, asking me to read to him when he was sick. All the memories we'd shared. How could none of that be real? Or was it all still real? What even is real after something like that? I tried to talk to Mom the next morning, but she just stared at me like I'd stabbed her in the chest when I said Marcus's name. "Where did you hear that?" she asked, her voice like ice. "I found the album," I said. "Dad told me everything." Her eyes filled with tears, but her jaw tightened. "You shouldn't have gone through our things. Why didn't you ever tell me?" I asked about Marcus, about Owen. She turned away, "Because I knew you'd hate me." "I don't hate you," I said quietly, "but I don't understand how you kept this from us, from him." Her shoulders shook as she whispered, "Because I never wanted him to feel like a mistake." Those words broke something in me, because I realized she didn't hide the truth for herself. She did it for Owen and for me. She was trying to protect the only family we had left. But it didn't feel like protection. It felt like betrayal. For weeks, I couldn't look at my family the same way. I'd sit across from Owen at dinner and see the ghost of someone else's face in his eyes. I watched Mom like a stranger, noticing how distant she always was with Owen. Even when she smiled, I understood now she loved him. Yes, but there was always a wall. Guilt, maybe shame. And Dad, he was trying so hard to keep everything afloat. But he looked older overnight, like the weight of the truth had finally crushed him. I wasn't sure what to do with the truth. Part of me wanted to keep the secret. For Owen, for the sake of peace. But another part, the part that hated the lies, knew that wasn't fair. He deserved to know where he came from. He deserved to know everything. I told myself I would wait until Owen turned 16. Just a little older, I thought, just a little stronger. But the universe had other plans. It was a week before Owen's 15th birthday, when a man showed up at our front door. I had never seen him before, tall, dark-skinned, wearing a navy coat, and holding a manila envelope. Dad answered the door. I was upstairs but could hear everything. "Is she here?" the man asked. Dad didn't answer right away. "She's not home." "I'm not here to make trouble." The man said, "I just want to meet him just once." "You need to leave," Dad said, his voice low and hard. "You can't be here." There was a pause, then the man said, "I'm his father, you can't erase me." I froze. He's his father. I looked out the window, just in time to see Dad shove the envelope back at the man, who dropped it on the porch as he walked away. I waited until Dad left later that evening. Then I slipped outside and grabbed the envelope. Inside were photos, a birth certificate, a letter. The letter was short, just a few lines. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just want to see my son once. To know if he's okay. I've stayed away because I was asked to. But I'm done living in silence." I sat on the porch in the dark, staring at the paper. I knew then that everything was about to change. When Mom got home that night, I showed her the envelope. She went white as a sheet. "Where did you get that?" "He came here," I said. "The man, he wants to see Owen." She sat down, head in her hands. "He wasn't supposed to know where we lived." I changed everything. I thought we were safe. "Safe from what?" I asked. "You're acting like he's dangerous." "He's not," she whispered, "but he's chaos. I couldn't raise a child with him. I didn't want that life for Owen." I leaned forward. "He's asking for one meeting. What are you going to do?" She didn't answer. I didn't know what to do either. But that night, I made a decision. I was going to tell Owen everything. The next afternoon, I picked him up from school and took him to the park. I brought the envelope. "I need to tell you something." I said something important. He looked nervous immediately. "Are you dying or something?" "No," I said, laughing a little. "It's not about me, it's about you, and Mom and Dad." His face changed. "What do you mean?" I handed him the envelope. He looked through the photos, his hands shaking. Then he stared at the birth certificate for a long time before looking up at me. "Is this real?" "Yes," I said softly. "That man came to the house. He says he's your biological father." His eyes filled with tears. "And Dad? Dad raised you, he loves you, that's never changed." Owen didn't cry right away. He just sat there, silent, staring into the grass. Then he said, "So they've all been lying to me. They thought they were protecting you." I said, "But yeah, it was a lie." He didn't speak to anyone for 3 days. When he did, it was to ask Mom to tell him the whole story. She did through tears. She begged for his forgiveness. He listened, arms crossed, stone-faced. Then he turned to Dad and asked, "Why did you stay?" Dad said, "Because I love you. From the second I held you, you were my son. That's all that matters." Owen's face crumbled. He hugged Dad tighter than I'd ever seen him hug anyone. And then, a week later, Owen asked to meet his biological father. Mom said no, but this time Owen didn't listen. He found the man's contact info, probably from the envelope, and reached out. They met at a diner. I went with him. It was quiet, awkward, but the man, his name was Brian, was kind. Gentle. He didn't try to claim Owen or drag him away. He just asked about school, sports. Music. He said he was proud of him, that was all. Owen cried in the car afterward. "Why couldn't they just tell me?" he asked. I didn't have an answer. All I knew was this: the truth hurts. But lies, especially the ones told with good intentions, hurt so much more in the end. That was 4 years ago. Owen still lives with Mom and Dad, but he visits Brian now and then. He doesn't call him Dad, but he knows where he comes from. And I think that means something. As for me, I've never looked at family the same way again. It's not blood, it's not even love. Always, it's the decisions you make when no one's watching. The choice to stay, to forgive, to raise someone who isn't yours, and never tell them the difference. That's the story of how my family unraveled, and somehow stitched itself back together in a way I never expected. The first year after everything came out was hard, for all of us. Owen changed in subtle but painful ways. He used to be this goofy, open-hearted kid who made jokes at dinner, and kicked my bedroom door open when he wanted to show me a meme. But after learning the truth, he got quieter, guarded. He stopped coming to family movie nights, stopped asking Mom for help with homework, stopped letting Dad hug him for too long. Not out of anger, I think, more like grief. Grief for the life he thought he had. Grief for the person he thought he was. There were days when I thought we might not bounce back from it. Then came the day we got the letter. It arrived by regular post, no return address, just our home address in shaky handwriting. I opened it because I happened to be the one grabbing the mail that afternoon. Inside was a folded piece of lined notebook paper, the kind we used in school. There was one sentence written on it: "You don't know the whole story." That was it. No signature, no explanation. I showed it to Mom. She went pale. She sat down hard on the kitchen stool and just stared at it. "You know who sent this?" I said quietly. She nodded once, slowly. "Is it Brian?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Then she whispered, "It's her." I stared at her. "Who?" She swallowed hard, tears filling her eyes. "Marcus's mother." Owen's eyes shot up. "Wait, what? I have another mom." "No," she said quickly. "Not like that. She gave up her rights, legally. She's not your mother anymore. I adopted you. Your dad and I raised you. We are your family." "But she is my mother," Owen said, voice rising, biologically. Mom's hands were shaking. She was unstable, addicted, dangerous. "You said he was the reason you left," Owen snapped. "They both were," she whispered. "You weren't safe." The room went quiet, and that's when I knew. We were still only halfway through the truth. It took weeks of digging to find her. Her name was Tessa Lanford. She had a Facebook page, mostly empty except for a few old photos, dark lipstick, tired eyes, cigarette in hand. She lived 2 hours away in a small town I'd never heard of. Owen messaged her. She responded instantly. They started talking almost every day, quietly, privately. I only knew because one day I walked into his room without knocking, and he slammed his laptop shut like I'd caught him watching porn or something. But the guilt in his eyes wasn't about shame. It was fear. I sat on his bed. "You're talking to her?" He didn't answer. "You can tell me," I said softly. "You know that, right?" After a long pause, he nodded. "She says Mom lied about everything. Says she never gave me up. Says I was stolen." I blinked. "What?" "She says she went to rehab, got clean, came back, and I was gone." The room spun for a second. "Do you believe her?" I asked. "I don't know," he whispered. A few nights later, I confronted Mom again. I showed her the messages. I read her Tessa's words. Mom didn't deny them. She just started crying. "I did what I had to do," she said. "She left you with strangers for days at a time. Once, she forgot to feed you for 2 days. I found you in a diaper soaked through, crying so hard your voice was hoarse. You were my student, Owen. Did you know that? You were in my daycare. That's how I met you. And when I realized no one was coming to get you, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't breathe." She wiped her face. I called CPS. I begged them to intervene, and they did. She got her rights suspended. I took you in as a foster parent at first. Then your dad and I fought for custody. And we won because she never came back, not for over a year. She says she was in a program. She disappeared, Mom sobbed. I had no way of knowing if you were safe. I loved you. I love you still. I did what I thought was right. Owen was behind me, silent. He didn't speak. He just turned and walked away. I didn't know what to believe anymore. Was my mom a savior or a kidnapper? Was Tessa a recovering mother trying to reconnect? Or just rewriting history? I decided to find out for myself. I drove to the town where Tessa lived. I didn't tell Owen. I didn't tell anyone. I just got in the car and went. She lived in a tiny house at the end of a gravel road, with peeling paint and wind chimes that rang like cracked glass in the wind. She looked older than I expected, not just in years, like something had aged her from the inside. But her eyes were sharp, sober, sad. You must be her daughter, she said. You look like your mother. We sat on her porch and talked. She told me stories about Marcus, about how scared she was, how young, how everyone gave up on her, how she relapsed once after giving birth. And when she came back, it was too late. She didn't deny she had failed, but she did deny giving up her rights. She never even let me say goodbye. She said just disappeared, changed his name, moved away, no pictures, no updates. I asked if she ever tried to get him back. I wrote letters, I called, no one answered. And then she pulled something from a shoebox, a tiny green onesie, the tag still attached. I bought this the week before I had him. She said I never got to put it on him. She handed it to me. I held it like it was radioactive. I don't want to take him from her. She said quietly, I just want him to know I loved him. Even if I was broken when he was born, I loved him. I came home and gave the onesie to Owen. He stared at it for a long time. Then he hugged it to his chest and cried. We sat on the floor, side by side. I don't know who I am anymore, he whispered. You're Owen, I said. My brother, that's who. He smiled through tears. Thank you. Years passed, and with time, something strange happened. We all started telling the truth. The full truth, not just the parts that made us look better. Dad admitted he had doubts in the beginning, that he wondered if loving a child who wasn't his by blood would feel different. It didn't, he said, not once. Mom said she should have told Owen earlier, that she let her fear win, that she was sorry. Tessa said she forgave them, not all at once, but little by little. And Owen, he forgave them too, but he never went back to calling Marcus his name. He said he'd been Owen too long. That Marcus was someone else, a ghost with a different past. He wasn't trying to erase anything. He was just moving forward. When Owen graduated high school, all four of them were there. Mom, Dad, Tessa, Brian. They sat in different rows, but they all clapped just as loud when his name was called. Afterward, we took a photo. Me, Owen, all of them. It was awkward, but it was real. And sometimes real is messy, complicated, beautiful in its own twisted way. That's what family is. After graduation, Owen took a gap year. Everyone expected him to go straight to college. He was smart, had the grades, and had even gotten into 2 solid schools. But he said he needed time to figure out who he was, time to understand where he came from. He started therapy, which none of us ever pushed, but we were relieved when he made that choice himself. The sessions helped. He told me later that he was finally able to process things he had shoved deep down for years. Things like why he sometimes felt like a guest in his own life, or why he would freeze when someone asked him simple questions about his childhood. He also began spending time with Tessa, carefully, in small doses. At first they'd meet for coffee once a week, then short hikes, then longer visits. He told Mom every time they planned something. She never tried to stop him, though sometimes I'd see her face afterward, tight, forced smiles, eyes glistening. But she never said a word against it, not once. One day Owen asked me to come with him, just me. We met Tessa at a small lake, tucked behind a trailhead. She brought a picnic. It was casual sandwiches, lemonade, fruit, but there was a heaviness in the air. Like we all knew this moment mattered more than we admitted. Midway through the meal, Tessa reached into her bag and pulled out a scrapbook. This is yours, she said. Owen hesitated before opening it. Inside were photos, not of him, exactly, but of the time before him. Of Tessa pregnant, of the apartment she lived in, of ultrasounds, of tiny shoes, of pages where she had scribbled things like, "He kicked today, and I hope he has my laugh." I glanced at Owen. His face was unreadable. "I kept this for you," Tessa said, "even when I didn't think I'd ever see you again." For a long time, we just sat in silence while Owen flipped through the pages. Then he said quietly, "Thank you." That was all, but it meant everything. Months passed. We started calling that year the year of hard conversations. Because once Owen started asking questions, we all started asking our own. I found myself wondering about things I'd never thought to question. Why Mom had always been so overprotective. Why Dad had such a hard time saying no to Owen, but not to me. Why they worked so hard to keep things normal, when it was clear our family was anything but. We started having these weird, long midnight talks, me, Owen, sometimes Mom and Dad, sometimes even Tessa. Over the phone, we talked about guilt, about what love really means, about identity, forgiveness, fear, and what it means to belong. That year didn't heal us completely, but it changed us. We stopped pretending. The following spring, Owen decided to visit Marcus. Brian had reached out again, asking if he'd be open to a conversation. He said Marcus had changed, that he had been in recovery for almost 3 years, that he wanted to talk, not as a father, but as a man who had made mistakes and wanted to try, at least once, to do the right thing. Owen debated it for weeks. In the end, he didn't go alone. I went with him. Marcus lived in a small apartment above a hardware store. When we arrived, he was already outside. Pacing, he looked older than in the photos, gray at the temples, thinner than expected. His hands trembled slightly as we approached. "Hi," Owen said, his voice low. Marcus looked at him like he was staring at a ghost. "I thought about you every day," Marcus said. "Every day I wondered what kind of man you'd become. I don't deserve to know, but I'm grateful you came." They talked for an hour. I stayed nearby just in case, but I didn't need to. Marcus didn't try to make excuses. He didn't beg for forgiveness. He just told the truth, how young he'd been, how afraid, how he spiraled after Tessa left, how ashamed he was, how proud he was to see the person Owen had become. Owen cried, so did Marcus. When we left, Owen didn't say much, but as we got in the car, he whispered, "I needed that." I nodded. "I think I'm finally ready to move on." Life didn't suddenly become perfect. There were still awkward holidays and tense dinners. Tessa and Mom never became best friends, but they were polite, civil, respectful. They both loved Owen, and sometimes love was enough. Owen eventually chose to attend college in a different state, close enough to visit, far enough to breathe. He majored in psychology, said he wanted to help kids like him, kids who felt split between two worlds. The night before he left, we sat on the roof of our house like we used to when we were kids. "Thanks for sticking with me," he said. "You're my brother," I told him. "There was never a choice." He smiled. "Still, you didn't have to." "I did, because you're not just my brother, Owen, you're my person." He laughed, then he got serious. "Promise me something." "Anything. Tell my story someday, the whole thing. The messy parts, the hard parts, not just the good stuff. Someone out there might need to hear it." I promised, and now here we are. If you're still listening, thank you. This isn't a story about villains and heroes. It's about people, broken people, brave people, people who hurt each other, people who chose, again and again, to try anyway. It's a story about family, the kind you're born into, and the kind you fight like hell to keep. Owen left for college on a bright August morning. It felt unreal watching him drive away, his car stuffed with boxes and books, and a worn-out hoodie he refused to give up. I stood in the driveway until I couldn't see his taillights anymore. For the first time in a long while, the house felt quiet, not sad, exactly, but hollow, like a deep breath held too long. Mom stayed busy. Dad busied himself with projects he'd been putting off. But I could tell, without Owen's presence, the center of our family had shifted. Not disappeared, just moved further away. We stayed in touch, of course. Calls, texts, random Snapchats. But it wasn't until Thanksgiving that we really talked. He came home with shorter hair. A different way of speaking, more confident, more sure of himself, but the biggest change. He laughed again, not just chuckles, but real belly-shaking laughter. At dinner, he told stories from school, about his roommate from Detroit who thought sweet tea was a myth, and his psych professor who made them journal about childhood trauma within the first week. And then, out of nowhere, he said, "I wrote an essay about Mom." The room went still. "She's not perfect," he continued, "but she gave me a life I never would have had, and I'm finally starting to appreciate that." Mom blinked back tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "I also wrote one about Tessa," he added, glancing at me. "Oh," I said. "Yeah, about how pain doesn't mean absence of love. Sometimes it's just proof that it was there and then it wasn't." That line stayed with me for days. The years passed quicker than we expected. Owen graduated with honors and went straight into a master's program for counseling. He started volunteering with foster kids. Some of them were angry, scared, confused. He never judged. He just sat with them, listened. Let them rage, let them cry. I once overheard one of the other volunteers say, "He's like a storm shelter for these kids." I smiled. That sounded exactly right. During this time, Owen began writing letters. Hundreds of them, to his future kids, to his younger self, to the parents he had, all of them. He never showed most of them to anyone. But one day, he let me read one he wrote to Marcus. It said, "I don't hate you anymore. I don't think I ever truly did. I think I hated the silence, the gaps, the unknown, but I've filled some of them now. And I forgive you, not because you earned it, but because I need to be free." I cried when I read that, because I finally realized what Owen had done. He had made peace with all versions of himself. One summer, a few years later, he brought someone home. Her name was Leela. She was warm, funny, and the kind of person who asked questions like she actually wanted to know the answers. They'd met in grad school. She was studying to become a speech therapist. That first dinner was chaotic. Leela accidentally knocked over a glass of wine, and Dad dropped a plate, and Mom forgot to take the bread out of the oven. But Owen just laughed. "Feels like home," he said, smiling at all of us. Later that night, I asked him, "Is this serious?" He nodded. "She knows everything. The whole story, and she didn't flinch. That's how I knew." A year later, he proposed. The wedding was small, backyard. Fairy lights, mismatched chairs. Tessa came, so did Marcus. They sat quietly in the back. Respectful, Mom gave a toast. She said, "Raising Owen made me braver than I ever thought I could be." There wasn't a dry eye in the crowd, especially not when Owen and I danced together during the sibling dance. Halfway through the song, he leaned down and said, "You kept me whole when I didn't know how to be a person." "You made it easy," I whispered. 2 years after that, Owen and Leela had their first child. A little girl they named June. Middle name, Eliza, after our mom. When they told Mom, she burst into tears. Tessa cried too. It was strange, seeing those two women stand side by side, linked by love, loss, and a child who had become something bigger than the pain that once divided them. Owen asked both of them to be grandmothers, to take turns babysitting, to both be there at birthdays. They said yes, because sometimes healing means building a new world instead of trying to fix the old one. Now, as I write this, June is 5 years old. She has her dad's eyes, Tessa's wild curls, Mom's stubbornness. The other day, she asked me why Uncle Owen has 2 moms. I said, because sometimes the universe gives us more than one person to love us. And your daddy, he needed all that love to become who he is. She nodded thoughtfully. "I want 2 moms too." I laughed. "You already have one really awesome one. That's more than enough." She thought about that, then she said, "Okay, but if I get another one, I'll share." Looking back now, I realized this wasn't just Owen's story. It was mine too. It was all of ours. A story of a family made of truths and second chances. A story that started with a secret and turned into something sacred. And if you take anything from it, let it be this. No family is perfect. Some are stitched together by paper and pain. Some are glued by hope or held together by a thread of stubborn love. But the ones that survive, they do so not because everything went right, but because someone, at some point, decided to stay. And that made all the difference. After June was born, something subtle shifted in Owen. It wasn't that he became a different person, more that he finally let himself be whole. I think fatherhood gave him a permission slip he didn't know he needed. A permission to be soft, to protect without fear, to love without needing to understand every inch of the past. One afternoon, I visited while Leela was at work. June was asleep on his chest, breathing softly, her tiny hand curled against his shirt. He looked down at her and said, "Do you know what the wildest thing is?" I shook my head. "She doesn't know anything I went through. She doesn't know about the fights, the secrets, the therapy, the pain. To her, I'm just Dad, the guy who makes pancakes and silly voices." "That's how it should be," I said. He nodded, his eyes glistening. "But sometimes I still get scared that I'll screw it up, that I'm broken, and it's going to leak into her life." "You're not broken, Owen. You were just patched up with gold." He smiled, Kintsugi. "Exactly." Over the next few years, the family kept evolving. Tessa moved closer, not into our neighborhood, but just a couple towns over. She never remarried, but she built a life for herself. Stable job, a rescue dog named Poppy, and friends who became her chosen family. She and Mom started occasionally exchanging birthday texts. They'd never be close, and that was okay. But they coexisted with grace. That was enough. Marcus remained in the background, present but quiet. He mailed June birthday gifts, simple things like books, puzzles, handmade wooden toys. He wrote letters, sometimes sent long emails to Owen. There was no pressure, no expectations, just a quiet rhythm of reconnection. And Owen flourished. He opened his own counseling center with Leela's help. They called it Second Light. It was built for people who had been through the darkest places and still found a way to shine again. The walls were painted in soft earth tones, the waiting room filled with plants, sunlight and art made by former clients. He hired people who had stories like his, people who had once been defined by their pasts, but chose to create something from the rubble. It became more than a clinic. It became a refuge. I remember one evening we had a family dinner, something rare now, with busy schedules and growing kids. June was 7 by then. She ran around the yard with a soccer ball while Owen manned the grill. Mom sat beside Tessa on the porch, laughing about something I didn't catch. Dad leaned over to me and said, "Do you think Owen's happy?" I looked at my brother, laughing, flipping burgers, calling Juna Captain Chaos, and I said, "I don't think I've ever seen him not carry some weight. But yes, I think he's as close to peace as he's ever been." Dad nodded slowly. I still remember the day we brought him home. I was terrified. Of what? That I wouldn't be enough. That I'd always just be the guy who came second. "Were you?" I asked. He looked at me. "Does it matter?" I smiled. "No, not anymore." By the time June turned 10, she knew everything. Not all the dark details, but the truth, the outline of it. She asked questions. Owen and Leela answered them gently. Honestly, they explained adoption, explained Tessa, explained Marcus. They didn't hide, and because of that, she never felt lied to. One night she came to me and said, "Did you know my daddy had 2 dads?" I did. "Do you think that's weird?" "I think it's rare, but rare isn't bad." She thought for a moment. "I think it's kind of cool. He says he got lucky. That most people only get 1 chance at family, but he got 3. I hugged her tight, and in that moment, I knew something for sure. What had once been a painful story, a complicated tangle of truths and loss, had turned into something else. A legacy. Then one summer, something happened. Tessa was diagnosed with breast cancer. Stage 2, treatable but serious. She called Owen first. I only found out when I showed up at his house and found him sitting on the porch, staring into the distance. "I don't want her to go through it alone," he said. "You won't let her?" I replied. He didn't. He went to appointments, sat with her during chemo, brought her flowers, and made her laugh when she was too weak to eat. Mom sent her casseroles. Leela picked up her prescriptions. Even Dad stopped by once to fix her broken porch light. It wasn't just healing, it was evolution. And when Tessa went into remission, the first person she hugged, after the nurse, was Owen. "You saved me," she whispered. "You brought me into this world." He replied, "Now we're even." Years passed, time softened the sharp edges. Marcus passed away quietly in his sleep. Just before June's 13th birthday, Owen flew out alone to settle things. When he came back, he carried a small wooden box, Marcus's final letter, and a photo of him holding Owen as a baby. Long before things fell apart, he kept this, Owen said, all these years. Some scars never fade, but some turn into roadmaps, reminders of where we've been and how far we've come. Now June is 17. She's graduating next spring, wants to study social work. She says she wants to help kids find their families, not the ones they're born into, the ones they choose. Sometimes, I wonder if she realizes she's the final chapter in all of this, the proof that pain can be transformed, that healing isn't just possible, it's contagious. As for me, I still write, sometimes for magazines, sometimes for myself, but the story that matters most is this one. The story of a brother, a son, a mother, a birth mother, a father lost, and a father found, a family born from ashes. I told Owen I'd share it one day. So now I have. And if you're still listening, if you've made it all the way here, let me tell you this. Whatever you've been through, it doesn't have to be the end of your story. Sometimes it's just the beginning of a better one.